An addictive RPG job system? Check, okay, I'm in. Action combat and a turn-based battle system? Yes, and yes. A bangin' soundtrack? Yep, that checks out. Immaculate art design? Yeah, whatever that is. And a narrative revolving around a fight for the throne. Alright, I'm Alex, and this is Metaphor ReFantazio. I got a chance to sit down and play Metaphor for a few hours, so I've got you covered. Here are some things you need to know to prepare for the October release. It's so close! Metaphor has a pretty unique hybrid combat system that is part real-time action and another part tactical turn-based. I love ARPGs and I love turn-based RPGs, so this combo hits. You can chew through enemies that you out-level without even entering the turn-based battle system, or you can gain the advantage at the start of one by getting in enough damage to trigger a squad ambush. However, if the enemy hits you, they gain the advantage at the start of the fight. I noticed that enemies have a tell, nicely showing off a white flash prior to hitting with those battle-triggering attacks. Even some of the beefier enemies can be outright killed without entering a turn-based battle if you just wait or dodge out of the squad attack indicator to let them break out a stun so you can continue hitting them again. If you're skilled enough and keep avoiding those outgoing attacks, you can completely take them out without even entering the turn-based battle system. That's not going to work on most bosses, but it seems to work on most regular fights out there in the world. The Archetypes, or you could call it a job system, is where the time-melting RPG tinkering goodness comes into play, at least for me. Towards the start of the game, I had access to the Seeker archetype, the Warrior, and the Mage. The Seeker is an all-around class that is kinda good at a little of everything, and it comes with an early game heal. The Warrior is strong in melee damage, you knew that, and the Mage is strong in elemental spells, you knew that as well. However, the true depth of this system comes from the archetype evolutions. The nodes I just highlighted white are entirely different advanced archetypes that branch off from the starter ones, like the Seeker gaining access to the Magic Seeker and then the Soul Hacker. Add in the other primary archetypes, add in their evolutions, and you have a massive amount of team building synergy contemplation. Each archetype not only has different skills, but also changes your elemental strengths and weaknesses, which is a whole other thing to consider when you're setting up for a boss. Changing the archetype of the main protagonist gives them entirely different weapons that are used for the action portion. The Warrior archetype sword is a lot slower but harder hitting than the Seeker sword, for example. And the Mage gets an AoE attack with their staff, which was my personal favorite of the early options. So archetypes decide your skills in the turn-based battles and your moveset during the real-time action. As you spend more time with teammates, you'll strengthen your bond with them, which is your main way to gain access to new archetypes. Kinda reminding me of the Velvet Room from Persona, you'll eventually be able to access Akademeia. This is a special location where you can spend accumulated mag to unlock archetypes. Most of them seem to require you to get up to a certain affinity rank with a character before they come available. Once you've purchased an archetype though, you can freely switch them out at any time for yourself or your party members just from the main menu. Yes, still the only developer that keeps putting out menus glorious enough to go up on your walls. Put a 10 out of 10 menus if you agree. Another thing that'll be familiar to Persona and Shin Megami Tensei fans is the focus on exploiting enemy weaknesses. When you hit someone's weakness, you use only half of a turn charge, indicated like this. So then you can act an additional time before it's the enemy's turn. Same thing goes for landing critical hits. Those will only use half of a turn charge. This applies to enemies too, so they can get an additional action if they hit your weakness. However, something you definitely do not want to do in this game is hit them with something they block, repel, or absorb. This will immediately end your whole turn, regardless of how many turn charges you might have had left. And something that I didn't get access to in this build was the game's synthesis system. This essentially lets you use extra turn charges to enhance your attacks and magic, like synthesizing a spell to hit all targets instead of just one. Each party member can be placed on either the front line or the back line, and both have their pros and cons. If you put someone on the back line, they take less damage and their weakness can't be exploited, but physical attack damage is drastically reduced on the back line. Front line is riskier, but that's where your physical attackers will deal the most damage. I found putting a mage on the back line is a good option, since spells deal full damage even from the back. Or you can put your tank on the back line and have them draw aggro, which puts that backline damage mitigation to work. Some enemies will target specific rows with extra powerful attacks, like this one. If you don't guard against or avoid those, it can wreck you. Changing your position luckily doesn't cost a turn though, so it's pretty easy to shift your party around and avoid those stronger attacks if you're paying attention. Now, I don't talk about story too much on my channel. I'm more of a gameplay guy, so it usually takes a lot to get me intrigued by a game's narrative. But this concept really fascinates me. In metaphor, humans are actually the otherworldly fantasy creatures that don't belong in this world, and they become the main abominations you'll be fighting. Also, humans' anxiety is infecting this world, but the people have learned to harness it as a catalyst to cast spells. So anxiety-powered magic from us horrible humans, that's just cool. Not giving away too much, the main through line of the story involves a contest for the throne. Anyone of any birth is viable to ascend the throne, if they get enough backing from the people. And that's where you come in. Metaphor isn't an open-world RPG in the traditional sense, but it does have an overworld map that lets you travel between major locations. You start out on foot, but you eventually get your Gauntlet Runner ship, which functions as your main hub base that transports you from area to area. Metaphor seems to have 5 difficulty settings, starting with normal, which is good if you've played a few RPGs before, then easy if you're pretty new to RPGs, and then storyteller if you really don't want to concern yourself with combat so you can see the narrative through to conclusion. Going in the other direction, you have hard, which is where most experienced Persona and Shin Megami Tensei players should likely start at. And then Regicide, which either wasn't available in this build or you need to unlock it after you complete the game. If you do bump up the difficulty to hard or Regicide, enemies not only hit harder, but some of them even get extra turns in battle. That adds a whole new wrinkle to how much punishment bosses can inflict on those higher difficulties. Unlike Persona and the Shin Megami Tensei series, the main protagonist can be down during a fight and then resurrected by a teammate, so it's not an instant game over if your main character dies. If the Archetype system didn't already have enough options, you can also carry over a couple of skills from one archetype over to an entirely different one. This lets you pretty much make your own unique class combo that gains access to a wider range of abilities. Characters' primary stats are broken down like this. Luck mainly increases item acquisition rate. Agility raises hit chance, evasion, and escape success. Endurance reduces incoming damage, kinda like a defense. Magic raises your magic attack, and strength increases your physical attack. And if you don't want to always issue direct commands to your entire team, the game does have an auto battle function that uses the tactics you set. Metaphor has an entirely optional online component that lets you see other players' team compositions that have already cleared the dungeon you're in and apply that build to your own team. There's many team composition options since you can double up or triple up on archetypes, because some passive skills increase outgoing damage if you have more of that same type of archetype on your team. 3 mages build, anyone? Alright, so Metaphor was already one of my most anticipated games right after it first got announced, because the team's track record only puts out top-tier RPGs. Since actually getting to play the game twice now, once in LA for Summer Game Fest and once in New York City, that's only solidified it as my most anticipated RPG. Let me know what you guys think from what I showed though, and I'm curious what your first Atlas game actually was. Mine was Persona 4. As always, I'm Alex, doing all of this myself, and thanks to you for sticking around on my channel. And a thanks to Sega for taking me out to New York City, letting me play the game, and sponsoring today's video, making it all happen.